You've attached yourself to me like a parasite. That's what she said, while pushing away the breakfast I made, same as every morning. 3 pepper shakes, tea steeped 4 minutes. I'd quit my job, cared for her full time, managed her meds, her bills, her insults, and that's what I got. But it got worse. 2 weeks later, the nursing home called me, to ask why her payments stopped. I was still her power of attorney. She hadn't changed it. Probably forgot I even had it. So while she slept, I walked out the front door with one small folder that changed everything. She called me a parasite. She had no idea I'd already cut the cord. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Jocelyn Barrett, and I'm 35 years old. I spend my days managing medications, doctor's appointments, and an endless stream of criticism in my childhood home. My mother, Eleanor, a woman who perfected the art of disapproval long before her illness, watches my every move from her leather armchair. The house still carries the ghost of my father Thomas through his old books and reading glasses, though he's been gone 3 years now. Every morning, I wipe down the antique furniture with lemon cleaner, trying to preserve what's left of our family's facade. I've given up my paralegal career, my apartment, my independence, all to care for a woman who calls my cooking barely adequate and my voice grating. What she doesn't remember is the power of attorney paperwork she signed after Dad died. But let me start from the beginning. I'd managed 3 months of full-time caregiving when that morning arrived. The February sun barely touched the kitchen windows as I arranged her breakfast tray, everything precisely as she demanded. Toast cut into triangles, not rectangles. Scrambled eggs with exactly 3 turns of the pepper mill. Earl Grey tea steeped for precisely 4 minutes, no more, no less. The scent of my father's favorite tea still made my throat tight. He'd drunk it every morning at that same kitchen table, reading his newspaper, sharing quiet smiles with me over the rim of his cup. But now the kitchen held only echoes and the soft whir of the heating system. "Your timing is off again, Jocelyn," Mother said as I set the tray across her lap. Her voice carried that familiar note of disdain, the one that made me feel 14 again. The tea's obviously oversteeped. And these eggs are practically rubber. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the tray's position. "I can make fresh ones." "Don't bother." She pushed the tray away, nearly spilling the tea. "I've watched you fumble around this house for months now, acting like some sort of martyr. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I stepped back, my hip bumping against the side table. "Notice what?" "How you've attached yourself to me like a parasite." The word sliced through the air between us. "Living off my charity, pretending it's devotion. Your father always coddled you, but I see exactly what you are. Parasite." The word burrowed deep, confirming every midnight doubt I'd ever had. Every Christmas gift returned unopened. Every achievement met with silence. Every attempt at connection rebuffed with cutting precision. "I left my job to help you," I whispered, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they meant nothing to her. "Help me?" She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You left because you had nowhere else to go. No real career, no relationship. Just like always, hanging onto my coattails because you can't stand on your own." I didn't respond. Couldn't. The morning light suddenly felt too harsh, too exposing. I gathered the rejected breakfast tray and retreated to the kitchen, my movements mechanical. The eggs went into the garbage disposal, the tea down the drain, the toast into the trash. Each action felt like shedding a piece of myself. That afternoon, while she dozed in her recliner, mouth slightly open, reading glasses askew, I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom. The same pale blue walls, the same flowered bedspread, the same suffocating feeling of being trapped in amber, forever the disappointing daughter. I pulled my old duffel bag from under the bed and began filling it. Clothes, toiletries, the photo of Dad and me at his bookstore opening that Mother had banished to my room because she said it was unprofessional. My hands moved with quiet purpose, like they belonged to someone else. In Dad's study, I opened the bottom drawer of his desk. The manila folder sat exactly where I'd left it 3 years ago, after he passed. Power of attorney documents, still bearing Mother's signature. She'd been so dismissive when signing them, barely glancing at the papers. "Just handle it, Jocelyn. You're good at managing tedious details." The folder went into my bag. I didn't write a note. What was there to say? That I was sorry for being such a disappointment? That I wished she could have loved me? That I was taking the one piece of control she'd carelessly given away? The February dusk was settling in as I walked out the front door, past the carefully tended hydrangeas that never bloomed quite right for Mother's taste. I had no real plan, just enough money saved for a few weeks at an extended stay hotel. But for the first time in months, I could breathe. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my hotel room, scrolling through job listings, when an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but something made me answer. "Ms. Barrett?" A crisp, professional voice. "This is Sharon from Oakwood Manor Care Facility. We're calling about the overdue payments for your mother." The facility manager's voice crackled through my phone speaker. "Ms. Barrett? Are you still there?" "Yes, sorry." I pressed my fingers against my temple, buying time to think. "You said the payments have stopped?" "That's correct. We've sent multiple notices but haven't received any response. According to our records, you're still listed as the primary financial contact and power of attorney for Marlene Barrett." My mouth went dry. Of course she hadn't changed it. That would have required admitting she'd given me any authority in the first place. I opened my laptop, muscle memory typing in the passwords to accounts I'd managed for years. "I see." I kept my voice neutral, professional, the way I used to sound at the law office. "How many payments have been missed?" 2 months now. Ms. Barrett, if we can't resolve this..." The banking portal loaded. There sat the joint accounts, the investment portfolio, the trust fund Dad had set up before he died. Everything exactly where I'd left it, untouched. With a few clicks, I could release the automatic payments, restore the status quo, make it all go away. But my fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The word parasite echoed in my head, along with every dismissive sigh, every cutting remark. I thought of all the nights I'd stayed up reviewing these same accounts, making sure every bill was paid, every investment properly managed. Always the responsible one, always the dutiful daughter. "I understand the situation," I told the manager. "I'll need to review the accounts and get back to you. Can I have your direct number?" After jotting down her contact information, I dove deeper into the transaction history. That's when I noticed them. Regular transfers to M. Jacobs, each one substantial. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Melissa, my cousin who'd barely spoken to us for years, until she started showing up for coffee dates with Mother right after Dad died. The same Melissa who worked in luxury real estate and always managed to mention her latest commission at family gatherings. Who'd looked at me with barely concealed pity when I moved back home. Who'd been whispering in Mother's ear about investment opportunities and estate planning. My hands shook slightly as I navigated to the cloud drive where I kept backup copies of all the legal documents. Dad had taught me that. Always keep copies, always stay organized. The familiar folders appeared. Tax records, property deeds, the trust documentation. I clicked on the trust folder. There, at the top of the file list, sat a new document. Modified date, 2 weeks ago, right after I left. "No," I whispered, opening the PDF. "No, no, no." The text swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out with horrible clarity. "Hereby revoke all previous versions. In recognition of true familial loyalty. Sole beneficiary, Melissa Jacobs." The room tilted sideways. I thought of Dad's face the day he'd set up the trust, how carefully he'd explained his wishes. The bookstore fund, the education accounts for future grandchildren, the retirement security he'd wanted for me. All of it, now redirected to Melissa. A notification popped up on my screen, a new email from my cousin herself. The subject line read, "Hope you're doing well." The fake concern in those 4 words made my stomach turn. I clicked back to the banking portal, staring at the numbers that represented my father's legacy. The power was still technically mine. I could freeze everything, demand answers, fight back. But the weight of decades of conditioning pressed down on me. Don't make waves, don't upset Mother, don't be difficult. Another transfer to M. Jacobs appeared, processing in real time. Even as I watched, my inheritance, my father's final gift, was being siphoned away by someone who'd swooped in the moment I finally broke free. The facility manager's number still glowed on my phone screen, waiting for my call back. Next to it sat Mother's contact, unchanged since the day I'd programmed it in. Mother, home. Not Mom. Never just Mom. I opened another tab and logged into the cloud drive's activity log. There it was. The trust document had been uploaded from Mother's home computer, but the file properties showed it was created on Melissa's laptop. They hadn't even tried to hide their tracks. Why would they? They never expected me to look. The timestamp on the trust modification hit me like a physical blow. August 15th, just 8 weeks after we'd laid Dad to rest. While I was still writing thank you notes for funeral flowers, they'd been plotting to erase me. You know that moment when rage feels almost like calm? When your hands stop shaking because every muscle in your body has gone absolutely still? That's where I found myself, staring at my laptop screen in my bare apartment, the truth finally crystallizing. I'd spent the last 5 years of my life playing nurse, housekeeper, and emotional punching bag. Meanwhile, Melissa, who couldn't even be bothered to send a Christmas card most years, had somehow become the real daughter, the one who deserved it all. Opening another tab, I logged into the Trust Administrator's portal. The interface was familiar. I'd helped Dad set it up, after all. Right there on the dashboard, a red notification caught my eye. Final disbursement scheduled, 90 days. My throat went dry. 3 months. That's all I had to stop this before everything disappeared into Melissa's perfectly manicured hands. I paced my small living room, mind racing. The worn carpet beneath my feet was nothing like the plush rugs at home, but for the first time, I was grateful for the stark difference. It helped me think clearer, without the weight of that house pressing down on me. Random conversations started floating back, taking on new meaning. Mother at breakfast. Family loyalty is about more than just showing up, dear. Mother on the phone with someone. Yes, it's time for a fresh start. Mother to Melissa at Sunday dinner. Some people just don't understand their place. Their place? Right. Like the place I'd kept for years, serving and sacrificing while they planned my financial execution. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed, watching headlights trace patterns on my ceiling, my laptop humming beside me. Around midnight, I started a document titled Timeline. By 2 a.m., I had pages of dates, conversations, and incidents that suddenly made terrible sense. But raw facts weren't enough. I needed someone who understood numbers, someone who could trace money trails and spot legal loopholes, someone smart enough to see patterns I might miss, and angry enough to want justice. The name came to me just as dawn was breaking. Asha Singh. Back in high school, Asha had been our class valedictorian, brilliant at math, fearless with authority, and one of the few people who'd seen through my mother's polite facade. She'd gotten a front-row seat to Mother's true nature at our graduation party, where Mother had dismissed her as the math girl and suggested she'd only succeeded because she had nothing else to focus on. Now Asha was a CPA specializing in nonprofit audits. I'd kept loose track of her career through social media, enough to know she'd built a reputation for uncovering financial fraud. More importantly, she had a personal score to settle with my mother. My hands hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to someone you haven't really talked to in years? How do you ask them to help you fight a battle this personal? Finally, I typed, "Remember when you told me some numbers don't add up? Turns out you were right about more than just the calculus homework. I need your help." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message notification showed delivered immediately. Asha was online despite the early hour. 3 dots appeared. My heart pounded as I waited. Her reply came through, "Still up at dawn doing other people's work, Jocelyn?" I smiled despite everything. Same old Asha, cutting straight to the heart of things. "Not anymore," I wrote back. "But I could use that sharp mind of yours. Can we meet? Corner booth at Maple Street Cafe, 9 a.m. Bring everything you've got." I looked at my timeline document, the trust paperwork, the account statements. 3 months to undo years of manipulation. It seemed impossible. But then I remembered how Mother used to say I was impossible to deal with whenever I questioned her decisions. How Melissa had smirked when I mentioned Dad's plans for the bookstore. How they'd both dismissed every dream I'd ever voiced. I started gathering my documents, determination replacing exhaustion. Maybe it was time to show them just how impossible I could be. I arrived at Maple Street Cafe 15 minutes early, but Asha was already there, claiming our old corner booth with her laptop open and 2 steaming mugs waiting. The sight of her, hair still in that practical braid, sharp eyes scanning her screen, brought back a flood of memories. "You remembered how I take my coffee," I said, sliding into the booth. 2 sugars, splash of cream, some things stick." Asha looked up, her smile warm but knowing. "Like your mother's garden party commentary about my cultural mathematical advantages." I winced. God, I wanted to disappear that day. Please. I watched you dump punch on your new white sweater just so you could leave early and take me with you. She closed her laptop. So, tell me what's happening. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The caregiving, the cruel dismissal, the trust discovery. Asha didn't interrupt, just nodded and took notes in her precise handwriting. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. We'll find the crack, she said simply. Every fraud has one. Give me access to everything you've got. We settled into a rhythm over the next few days. Asha would come by my apartment after her regular clients, armed with takeout and that razor-sharp focus. We created a war room on my dining table, laptops, legal pads, and endless cups of coffee. The familiar scent of pad thai and green curry became our fuel as we combed through years of digital paperwork. Look at this, Asha said on our fourth night, pointing to her screen. The notary stamp on the trust revision. Something's off. I leaned in. What do you mean? See this number sequence? All notary stamps have a unique identifier registered with the state. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Let me cross-reference. There. The state database showed something completely different. The stamp's fake? Better than that. Asha's eyes lit up. According to this, the notary whose number they used didn't even get licensed until 8 months after this document was supposedly signed. My heart started racing. Can you prove it? Already downloading the verification records. She paused. But wait, there's more. What was the date on this trust revision? March 15th, 2 years ago. Why? Asha's smile turned predatory. Because I just pulled your mother's medical records from the portal you shared. Guess where she was that entire week? I grabbed the hospital discharge summary. Sacred Heart Medical Center. Admitted March 12th, discharged March 18th. For pneumonia. Pretty hard to sign legal documents in front of a notary when you're on oxygen support, wouldn't you say? The realization hit me like a wave. They forged everything. The signature, the stamp, and they were sloppy about it. Asha started printing documents. This is exactly the kind of fraud that gets trusts invalidated. We just need to file a formal challenge with... The sharp buzz of my phone cut through the moment. A notification flashed. Motion detected. Vehicle perimeter breach. We both froze. I'd installed those sensors after moving out, paranoid about leaving anything important in my car. Now they were sending rapid alerts, along with grainy night vision footage of someone in dark clothing forcing my passenger door. Oh my God, I whispered, watching the figure rummage through my car. The documents are all in here, Asha finished, gesturing to our laptops. But they don't know that. We watched in helpless rage as the thief emerged with my messenger bag, the one I'd deliberately filled with old papers and receipts, keeping everything important safely backed up on drives and in the cloud. Still, seeing someone violate my space, clearly sent to intimidate me. They're scared, Asha said quietly, her hand finding mine across the table. This proves we're on the right track. They wouldn't be pulling amateur break-in tactics if we weren't close to exposing everything. I squeezed her hand back, fear mixing with a strange sort of validation. What do we do now? Now? Asha turned back to our evidence, jaw set with determination. Now we show them what happens when they underestimate the math girl and her best friend. I burst through my apartment's front door and sprinted down 3 flights of stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The parking lot security lights cast harsh shadows across my car's violated interior. Someone had jimmied the passenger door lock, leaving ugly scrapes in the black paint. My hands shook as I surveyed the damage. The satchel was gone. All of it. The printed trust documents, my timeline of events, even the handwritten notes detailing conversations I'd overheard between my mother and Melissa. The leather messenger bag I'd carried since my paralegal days had vanished, along with every shred of evidence we'd gathered. Remember how your stomach dropped as a kid when you lost something important? This felt 1,000 times worse. My knees went weak, and I had to lean against the car to stay upright. Who knew what we were doing? Had someone been watching us? The thought of Melissa or my mother hiring someone to break in made my skin crawl. They'd always viewed me as naive, easily controlled. Maybe they were right. I should have seen this coming. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I pulled up Asha's number. She answered on the first ring. They took everything, I said, my voice cracking. The whole satchel, all the documents. Come over, Asha cut in, her tone steady. Right now, don't touch anything else in the car, just come to my place. I hesitated. But the evidence? Jocelyn. That familiar, no-nonsense tone grounded me. Get in your car and drive here, now. 20 minutes later, I sat at Asha's kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug of chai she'd insisted I drink. The familiar blend of cardamom and ginger, the same recipe her mother had made for us during high school study sessions, helped calm my racing thoughts. Without a word, Asha opened her laptop and turned it to face me. There, organized in neat digital folders, was everything. Every single document we'd gathered, scanned at high resolution. All our notes, typed up and time-stamped. Even photos of the fraudulent notary stamp zoomed in to show the inconsistencies. I'm an auditor, she said simply. I don't trust paper copies. The relief hit me so hard I actually laughed, a sound caught between a sob and pure joy. You backed everything up. Of course I did. She squeezed my shoulder. And now we know they're scared enough to play dirty, which means we've got them. I straightened up, energy flooding back. But we've only got 10 days before the trust disbursement deadline. Asha nodded, pulling up the trust administrator's portal. I've drafted our challenge report. Look, itemized evidence, timeline of fraud, even precedent cases supporting our position. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, scrolling through pages of meticulous documentation. We just need to... She trailed off, frowning at a red asterisk on the submission page. What? I leaned closer. What's wrong? Trust challenges have to be submitted through a licensed attorney. She clicked through several more pages. We can't file directly, even with all this evidence. And according to the rules, she squinted at the fine print. The attorney has to be registered with the Trust Administration Board specifically. My stomach dropped again. How many attorneys qualify? Let me check. More typing. Then, in our jurisdiction, maybe 20. And they need to submit a conflict check before taking the case, which usually takes... how long? 2 weeks, minimum. She met my eyes. We have 10 days. I slumped back in my chair. So, even with all the evidence, even knowing exactly what they did, we can't file in time? Not unless we find an attorney willing to rush a conflict check and file an emergency petition. Asha started making a list. Most won't touch trust challenges this close to disbursement. The liability is too high. And the ones who might? Probably won't have an opening for months. She rubbed her temples. Plus, anyone registered with the trust board likely has connections to the administrator. They won't want to risk those relationships. I stared at the screen, at all our carefully gathered proof. So close to justice, only to be blocked by bureaucratic red tape. There has to be a way. There might be. Asha's voice had that careful tone she used when working through a puzzle. But first, we need to figure out exactly who's on that approved attorney list. Have you ever noticed how desperation makes time feel different? Every minute stretches like taffy, but days blur past in a heartbeat. That's how those next 48 hours felt while Asha worked her contacts. No. Definitely no, she muttered, crossing names off her list. We'd called every trust attorney in the jurisdiction. Some didn't return our calls. Others gave polite brush-offs about full calendars and complex matters requiring thorough review. One actually laughed when we mentioned our deadline. I was slumped on Asha's couch around 11 that night, watching her pace with her phone, when her expression suddenly shifted. Wait. Daniel Kim. Who? Junior associate at Caldwell & Ross. She gave me a quick, conspiratorial smile. He kind of owes me. Remember that massive tax audit scandal last year? The one where that nonprofit almost went under? I shook my head. Well, Daniel was handling their accounts, and let's just say I helped him find some creative but legal solutions. He's registered with the trust board, has to be, his firm handles major estates. She was already dialing. Daniel? Hi, it's Asha Singh. Yes, I know what time it is. 20 minutes later, we were crossing the marble lobby of a downtown office building. The night security guard barely glanced at our visitor badges as we rode the elevator to the 23rd floor. Daniel Kim looked exactly like someone who practically lived at his desk. Rumpled gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses slightly askew, perpetual shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. But those eyes were sharp as he scanned our documentation. The notary stamp is definitely wrong, he murmured, zooming in on his screen. And these transfer patterns? He pulled up another window. The timing matches your mother's hospital stays perfectly. Someone was counting on her being distracted. Can you help us? I asked. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything feel slightly surreal. He leaned back, rubbing his face. Filing this close to disbursement is risky. If we miss any deadlines, even by minutes, the challenge fails permanently. He studied me. You understand what you're asking? I understand what they tried to steal from me, I said quietly. Everything my father worked for. Something in his expression shifted. He glanced at Asha, then back to me. Give me an hour to draft the emergency petition. If, and only if, everything checks out, I'll take it. The next 60 minutes were endless. I paced the conference room while Asha helped Daniel cross-reference dates and signatures. Finally, he walked in with a stack of papers. Sign here, here, and initial here, he said, sliding over a retainer agreement. The clock on the wall read 12:17 a.m. I'll file first thing in the morning, but remember, any delay, any missing document, and we lose our window. 2 days later, I sat in Daniel's office, watching him submit the final challenge package to the Trust Board's portal. Every document, every piece of evidence, every carefully crafted argument, all of it compressed into a single PDF that would determine my future. And, submitted. Daniel hit enter. Timestamp, 2:47 p.m., 48 hours before the disbursement deadline. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for days. Now what? Now we wait. The board has to review before they can freeze the trust assets. He adjusted his glasses. Could be hours, could be days, but they have to respond before... My phone buzzed. A banking alert. I almost ignored it until I saw the amount. My hands shook as I pulled up the account dashboard. There it was, a transfer in progress from my mother's primary account to... I clicked through, heart pounding. A private brokerage account, registered to M. Jacobs. Oh my God. I turned the screen to show Asha and Daniel. They're emptying her accounts, right now. Asha leaned in, eyes narrowing at the transaction details. They must know we filed. They're trying to move whatever they can before the freeze hits. Can they do that? I asked Daniel. He was already typing. The challenge only covers trust assets. Other accounts, he grimaced, would need separate legal action to stop. I watched the numbers tick down in real time, feeling sick. All that careful planning, all our precise timing, and they were still finding ways to steal more. The word parasite echoed in my head, but this time it painted a different picture. Melissa, quietly bleeding my mother's accounts dry while we all waited for the trust board's response. I grabbed my phone and stepped into the hallway, hands trembling as I pulled up the trust administrator's contact info. The call went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. It was after hours. But their emergency fraud hotline. Trust Services Fraud Prevention. This is Marcus. Hi, my name is Jocelyn Barrett. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I'm calling about trust number 847392, Barrett Family Trust. We just filed a challenge, but I need to report potential asset concealment. Papers shuffled on his end. One moment. Yes, I see the challenge filing came in today. What's your concern? I described the transfers I was watching happen in real time, forwarding screenshots as we spoke. The beneficiary listed in the contested revision is moving substantial amounts to private accounts right now. And you have proof these transfers started after your challenge was filed? Yes. Time-stamped banking alerts. I'm sending those too. More typing. Ms. Barrett, given the timing and amounts involved, this could constitute anticipatory concealment. I'm escalating this to our compliance team. He paused. Do you still have power of attorney over any of these accounts? Yes, it was never revoked. Please hold. While I waited, I could almost hear Dad's voice from years ago. Always keep copies, Josie. Paper trails tell stories. He'd been right about so many things. Marcus came back on the line. Ms. Barrett, we're initiating an emergency administrative hold on all connected accounts pending review. The freeze should take effect within the hour. Thank you. I sagged against the wall, relief making my knees weak. We'll need you to submit formal documentation tomorrow, but this will prevent any further transfers tonight. Do you have a pen? I need to give you a case number. I was just finishing up with Marcus when my phone lit up with Melissa's number. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But no, I wanted to hear this. Hello? You vindictive little bitch. Melissa's voice crackled with rage. Who do you think you are? Someone protecting what's legally mine. The calm in my voice surprised even me. Did the transfers stop going through? You have no right. She was practically shrieking now. That money belongs to real family, people who actually deserve it. Not some sad little doormat who couldn't even keep her own mother's love. I pressed my free hand flat against the wall, steadying myself. Is that what you told her? When you convinced her to change the trust? Oh, please. Her laugh was ugly. She already knew what a parasite you were. I just helped her see there were better options. More successful options. The word parasite hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Successful at fraud, maybe. You pathetic, jealous little nobody. She was spitting words now. I'll sue you for slander. I'll make sure you never see a penny of that money. Good. I felt something shift inside me, like a key turning in a lock. Then we'll see each other in court. I'm sure the fraud investigators will love to hear your side. You... She choked on whatever she was about to say. The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time, from something that felt almost like power. A text from Asha lit up my screen. You okay? I started to type yes, then deleted it. Because I wasn't okay, not really. My cousin had just confirmed every awful suspicion. She'd manipulated my mother, stolen my inheritance, and nearly gotten away with it. And through it all, my mother had been silent. No calls, no messages, nothing. Remember those quiet moments when you're lying in bed and your mind starts spinning out all the worst possibilities? That's where I was heading. Tomorrow, the trust board would make their ruling. Everything I'd fought for would either be saved or lost forever. And somewhere out there, my mother was... I texted Asha back, need wine and company. Her response was immediate. On my way, bringing both. The morning of the ruling, I couldn't eat, couldn't sit still. Every notification on my phone made my heart jump. When the email finally came through at 9:47 a.m., my hands shook so badly I had to set the phone down and take 3 deep breaths before I could read it. Dear Ms. Barrett, it began. After careful review of the evidence submitted regarding Trust number 4471B, Barrett Family Trust, our board has reached the following determinations. I scanned down, key phrases jumping out. Clear evidence of fraudulent documentation. Notary inconsistencies. Timeline discrepancies. Immediate suspension of planned disbursement. The room started spinning. I grabbed my desk to steady myself, reading the next section twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The thoroughness of your documentation was instrumental in identifying this fraud. The trust board is formally disqualifying Melissa Jacobs as beneficiary and has referred this matter to the state attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges. I called Asha immediately. We did it, I whispered, my voice cracking. They're canceling everything. I just saw. Girl, I'm opening champagne tonight. This calls for... She stopped mid-sentence. Hold on, there's another email coming through. Oh my God. What? The Real Estate Ethics Board just confirmed receipt of our complaint package, with the trust ruling attached. She let out a low whistle. Melissa's firm takes fraud accusations seriously. This is going to blow up in her face. It did. 5 days later, Melissa's carefully curated LinkedIn profile updated with a single line. Seeking new opportunities. The prestigious real estate firm where she'd worked for 8 years had terminated her contract, citing ethical concerns. All those designer handbags and Instagram posts about manifesting success couldn't save her from the truth. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Then came the email from Sunset Grove Care Facility. Ms. Barrett, we are contacting you as the listed next of kin for Marlene Barrett regarding an urgent financial matter. My mother had applied for state assistance, claiming financial hardship. She'd listed me, the parasite, as her only living relative. The facility was terminating her luxury care contract and transferring her to a state-funded center across town. The old me would have felt guilty, would have rushed to fix it, to smooth things over, to make it all better. But that version of me died the day she called me a parasite. I closed the email without responding. Then I walked down the familiar hallway to Dad's study, where nothing had been touched since he passed. The leather chair still held the indent of his body. The air still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco and old books. Remember how certain smells can transport you? Standing there, I was suddenly 12 years old again, watching Dad sort through paperwork at his desk. He'd look up with that gentle smile and say, "Come here, Josie. Let me show you how to read these lease agreements." I crossed to his filing cabinet and pulled out the box labeled Store Lease Renewals. Inside, beneath yellowed papers and faded receipts, lay the blueprint of what could have been Dad's dream of opening a bookstore, the one Mom had dismissed as impractical, the one he'd never gotten to build. You know what's funny about karma? Sometimes it doesn't just even the score, it opens doors you thought were closed forever. I ran my fingers over the lease documents, feeling the texture of possibility beneath my skin. The trust money wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about legacy, about choices, about building something from the ashes of what was lost. The box sat open on Dad's old desk, its contents spread out like a map to a future I never thought I'd get to choose. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel the weight of anyone's expectations but my own. The lease renewal papers felt heavy in my hands as I stood outside the dusty storefront. 20 years of neglect had left their mark. Peeling paint, clouded windows, and a sign so faded you could barely make out Barrett Books and Beyond. But beneath the wear, I saw what Dad had seen. Possibility. "You sure about this?" Asha asked, clipboard in hand as we met the building inspector. "More sure than I've been about anything." I unlocked the door, and memories rushed out with the stale air. Dad showing me how to alphabetize inventory, the worn leather armchair where he'd read me stories, the little bell above the door that chimed like laughter. The inspector walked through, noting repairs needed. The list was long but manageable. With the trust money finally released, I could afford to do this right. "Your father had good bones put in," he said, tapping a solid wooden beam. "Place just needs some love." Over the next 4 weeks, Asha and I threw ourselves into restoration. She'd come by after her accounting job, armed with coffee and determination. We stripped wallpaper, repainted shelves, and cleaned years of dust from every corner. The work left us exhausted, but it felt like washing away old ghosts. "Look what I found," Asha called one evening, holding up a box marked Special Collections. Inside were leather-bound classics, Dad's pride and joy. I ran my fingers over the embossed spines, remembering how he'd describe each one like an old friend. "These go in the front window display," I decided, along with his first editions. The renovation transformed more than just the space. Each decision felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd surrendered during those caretaking years. The paint colors I chose, the reading nook I designed, the careful curation of books that would have made Dad proud. "You're different," Asha observed one night as we collapsed onto drop cloths, surrounded by empty paint cans. "Stronger." I thought about that while sorting through Dad's old desk drawer the next day. Among paper clips and rubber bands, something gleamed. A gold-plated bookmark, elegant and simple. Dad had shown it to me once, laughing about how it was too fancy for fiction. "This one's for serious readers only, Josie," he'd said with that trademark wink. "Save it for something special." I polished it carefully, watching the metal catch the light. Then I knew exactly where it belonged. The window display took shape, classic volumes, carefully arranged, first editions protected in glass cases. And there, catching the morning sun, that gold bookmark propped against a leather-bound copy of Great Expectations, Dad's favorite. "Perfect," Asha declared, stepping back to admire our work. "Opening day's going to be amazing." We'd scheduled the grand reopening for Saturday. Local papers had picked up the story. Historic bookstore returns under original owner's daughter. The community seemed genuinely excited. Even some of Dad's old customers had called, promising to return. That evening, after Asha left, I sat in Dad's restored reading chair, surrounded by fresh paint and possibility. The store felt alive again, waiting to welcome new stories and new readers. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Ms. Barrett? I'm calling from Oakwood Care Center. Your mother asked us to deliver a letter to you." My throat tightened. "A letter?" "Yes. She's been quite insistent. Would you like us to mail it, or—" I gave them my address before I could think better of it. An hour later, a manila envelope arrived by courier. The return address was written in my mother's precise handwriting, the same handwriting that had signed away my inheritance. that had drafted cutting notes about my inadequacies, that had filled out the paperwork to remove me from Dad's trust. The envelope sat on the counter like a landmine. Around me, the reborn bookstore held its breath. What could she possibly have to say now? After everything? I picked up the envelope, its weight somehow heavier than all the boxes we'd moved that week. I stared at that envelope for a long time, running my thumb across the precise, angular handwriting. You know that moment when you're about to open something that could hurt you, and your whole body screams to stop? Yeah. That feeling crawled up my spine like ice water. The paper was expensive, probably smuggled from her old facility before they transferred her. Even in a state-run home, she'd found a way to maintain her standards. Some things never change. I slid my letter opener under the flap, and 4 pages of cream-colored stationery slipped out. The first line hit like a slap. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done to your family. My hands started shaking. I forced myself to breathe, remembering how Dad used to tell me to count backward from 10 when things got overwhelming. The scent of fresh paint and old books wrapped around me like a shield. Her words dripped acid. She called me ungrateful, heartless, a disappointment. Said I'd betrayed everything she and Dad had built, that I'd thrown her into squalor while stealing what was rightfully Melissa's. Each paragraph was perfectly composed, architecturally designed to wound. The really twisted part? She didn't even acknowledge what she'd done. No mention of the forged documents, no explanation for cutting me out of Dad's trust. Just pure, redirected blame, as if I was the villain in her story. I got halfway through the second page before something inside me just clicked. You know that moment when you finally see through someone's manipulation? When the spell breaks? The store's radiator hummed softly. Outside, a car honked. Life was just going on, normal as could be, while I sat there holding what felt like a bomb made of words. But for the first time, I saw it for what it really was. Just paper. Just ink. Just one more attempt to control me through guilt. I walked over to the reading nook where we'd installed a small gas fireplace, Dad's old dream feature for cozy winter reading sessions. The flame danced behind the glass, warm and steady. Without reading another word, I dropped the entire envelope into the fire. The expensive paper curled, blackened, disappeared. Her perfect handwriting vanished into ash. And you know what? I felt nothing but relief. I thought about all those years I'd spent trying to earn her love, like it was some prize she held just out of reach. How many times had I apologized for existing? How many sacrifices had I made, hoping she'd finally see me? The fire crackled, eating the last bits of her letter. I touched the gold-plated bookmark in my pocket. Dad's legacy, not hers. Some mothers, I realized, don't know how to love. They only know how to own, how to shape, how to control. And that's not love at all. My phone buzzed, an email from someone at the local paper. They'd caught wind of the trust scandal, wanted my take on it, asked for a quote about family betrayal, about justice served. I started typing a response, then stopped. Hit delete. Sent back just 2 lines. Thank you for your interest. I prefer to let the facts speak for themselves. Closing my laptop, I walked to the store's front window. Morning sun caught the gold bookmark, making it shine like a beacon. Behind it, Dad's book stood proud and patient, waiting for new readers to discover them. Words rose in my mind. Not for reporters, not for my mother, not even for Dad. Just for me. A quiet truth I'd finally learned. You can't heal someone who won't admit they're wounded. You can't fix a relationship that only ever existed in your hopes. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, watching early commuters pass by on the sidewalk. Tomorrow, we'd open these doors. New stories would begin. And maybe that was the best revenge. Not fighting her darkness, but creating my own light. The half-burnt paper in the fireplace crumbled to nothing. My mother's words, finally where they belonged, gone. The bell above the door chimed at exactly 9 a.m. Sunlight poured through the freshly cleaned windows, catching on the gold-plated bookmark that now hung from a deep red ribbon. I'd positioned it just so, letting it catch the morning light, making it dance. The store smelled exactly like I remembered from childhood, that perfect mix of new paper and aged wood, with just a hint of coffee brewing in the back office. Dad used to say a bookstore without coffee was like a garden without water. Some memories don't hurt anymore. They just feel right. First customer incoming, Asha whispered, nudging my arm. She'd taken the day off from her firm to help, wearing a Barrett Books t-shirt I'd surprised her with that morning. A woman in her 60s stepped inside, her eyes widening as she took in the restored space. "Oh my," she breathed. "It looks just like I remember." My throat tightened. "Did you used to shop here?" "Every Thursday for 15 years. She smiled, touching a shelf gently. "Your father always knew exactly what to recommend. He had this way of listening. Really listening, you know?" I did know. Dad could hear the book you needed before you even knew you needed it. That's what made him special. He didn't just sell stories, he matched them to souls. More people filtered in as the morning stretched on. Old neighbors, former classmates. Each one carried a memory, a connection to this place that had somehow stayed alive even while the store sat empty. They ran their fingers along spines, inhaled that book scent deeply, smiled at the reading nook we'd restored. Asha kept the coffee flowing, pouring it into paper cups with our new logo. Every so often, she'd catch my eye and give me that look, the one that said, "I told you so," without words. She'd believed in this revival even when I doubted. Around 11, I was reorganizing the mystery section when I overheard two customers talking. It's like stepping back in time, isn't it? But fresher somehow. That's exactly what I'd aimed for. The bones of Dad's vision with new life breathed into it. We'd kept his old wooden shelves but refinished them. Updated the lighting, but maintained the warm glow he'd loved. Added a children's corner with tiny chairs and picture books displayed at kid height. The register dinged steadily all morning, each sale feeling like a small victory. But it wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming something I thought I'd lost forever. I touched the small note card in my pocket, the one where I'd written down that word. Parasite. The word that had broken everything open. The word that had finally made me see the truth. A young girl tugged at her mother's sleeve near the front window, pointing at the gold bookmark. "Look how it sparkles!" It did sparkle, catching light and throwing it back in defiant little flashes. Dad had always said it was too fancy for fiction, but I understood now why he'd kept it. Sometimes the simplest things can hold the most meaning. Asha appeared at my elbow with fresh coffee. "You okay? You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're thinking too hard." She pressed the warm cup into my hands. "Stop analyzing and just feel it." She was right. I closed my eyes and just felt the warmth of the cup. The quiet murmur of browsers, the subtle creak of floorboards that had supported thousands of reading feet over the decades. A parasite takes without giving back, drains without nurturing, destroys without creating. But look at this place. Look at these shelves, these books, these people rediscovering a piece of their community they thought was gone. Look at what grew from the ashes of that cruel word. The bell chimed again. More customers stepped in from the bright morning, each bringing their own energy, their own story. I moved toward them, ready to help them find whatever they were looking for. This wasn't destruction. This wasn't taking. This was resurrection. The bell's cheerful chime drew my attention as a little girl with pigtails skipped through the door, her mother following close behind. The sound still made me smile. We'd cleaned and polished that same brass bell Dad had installed 30 years ago. A piece of him, still announcing every new visitor to his beloved shop. I moved toward the front window display, adjusting a stack of new releases that had gotten slightly disorganized during the morning rush. The autumn sunlight caught the gold-plated bookmark hanging there, sending warm reflections dancing across the hardwood floors. Dad had kept it tucked away in his desk drawer, claiming it was too fancy for fiction. But now it had found its perfect place. A beacon of something preserved, something reclaimed. You know that feeling when you're exactly where you're supposed to be? When everything aligns in a way that makes even the hard parts worth it? That's what washed over me as I stood there, watching the bookmark catch the light. A familiar figure caught my eye through the glass. Melissa. Her designer handbag was gone, replaced by a worn leather tote. Her carefully maintained honey blonde hair had visible roots now, and her face looked drawn, tired. She walked quickly like someone trying not to be noticed, but she couldn't help glancing inside as she passed. Our eyes met for just a moment. I saw the flicker of recognition, the slight tightening of her jaw. But I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't give her any acknowledgement at all. She picked up her pace and disappeared around the corner, probably heading to whatever job she'd managed to land after the real estate firm let her go. The sight of her brought back memories of that final trust hearing. The way her perfectly crafted facade had cracked when the administrator announced their findings. How quickly her colleagues had distanced themselves once the ethics complaint was filed. The word fraud tends to do that in professional circles. Behind me, I heard the little girl giggle as she discovered the reading nook, her mother's gentle voice starting to read aloud from a picture book. The sound anchored me back in the present, reminding me of everything that mattered now. My mother remained in state care, her carefully constructed world of control completely dismantled. Last I heard, she still refused to accept responsibility for any of it. Some people never do. But her influence, her power to hurt, that was gone, like morning mist burning away in strong sunlight. The bookmark caught another ray, sending a bright flash across the shop's interior. We'd had it professionally cleaned before hanging it, and the engraved pattern along its edge seemed to come alive in the light. Something Dad had hidden away was now proudly displayed, its value finally recognized. Kind of like me, I suppose. Standing there, watching the life flowing through the store, customers browsing, Asha chatting with a regular by the coffee station, that little girl completely absorbed in her story, I felt the truth of it all settle into place. This wasn't just a business. It wasn't even just Dad's legacy restored. It was proof that toxic cycles could be broken, that new growth could spring from scorched earth. The words rose up without conscious thought, quiet but certain. She called me a parasite. Turns out, I was the cure. A mother's gentle reading voice floated from the children's corner, mixing with the soft music playing through the store's speakers. The scent of coffee and books filled the air. Outside, people walked past the window, some pausing to look at the displays we'd carefully arranged. Some even smiled at the gold bookmark catching the light. This was what healing looked like. Not an ending exactly, more like a beginning, one built on stronger foundations than before. The brass bell chimed again as another customer entered, and I turned to greet them, ready to help them find whatever story they were searching for. After all, that's what Dad had always done best. And now, finally, so could I. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.